The main claim that I'm responding to is that professional sports become careers once money comes into play. This causes more selfishness in the players compared to college athletes that play for the love of the game. And this is why I believe college games are more interesting to watch, because there are two different motives for playing. With this claim, it's kind of hard to pick out one specific claim. There's kind of a few things bunched together, but I decided that her main claim was that she believes college games are more interesting to watch because they are more interesting to watch, but I'm going to do my best to kind of respond to a few of the things that she mentioned. My opponent's secondary claims were: one, the professionals play for two different reasons; two, college games are more interesting to watch; and three, college athletes set a better example for young adults and children. My response to these claims is, although money is involved in professional sports, that does not, under any circumstances, mean the players don't have a love for the game, and professional sports are definitely more interesting than college sports. I'll begin with my response to her secondary claim number one. Although it is true that athletes do sign contracts and come to an agreement on how much money they will receive, it does not mean that they don't have a love for the game. Now I'm sure you guys have heard of having a job or career that you truly love will make you happier. But I doubt you've ever heard that if you really love your job, you should do it for free, receive no income, and live in a cardboard box. It doesn't happen. So I've been told many times in my life, if you're good at something, never do it for free. These players have trained their entire lives and put everything they have into being the best. And let me ask you something: why does a per se a lawyer make more money than another lawyer? It's because they're better at their job. They work harder, they've accomplished more, and they're just overall better at doing it. This same truth applies to a professional athlete. If they're better at playing, they're going to get paid more. They're more valuable to their team, and so on. I don't want to hear anyone say it's different because it's a game or it's easier. This is brought up on occasion, and according to website WiseGeek, the percentage of Americans that become a lawyer is 0.36, and according to the United States Sports Academy, the percentage of Americans that make it as a baseball player is roughly the same, just under 0.4. And I may also add that baseball has the highest odds out of any professional sports. So most sports are actually harder. You'd have a better chance becoming a lawyer than playing as a professional athlete. The second choice of evidence she chose to support this secondary claim is that professionals play for endorsements. This is a direct quote of hers. Professionals play for endorsements. They must play good for the money they receive from fame, rather than just playing for themselves. All right, so let's look at this. In her claim, it says this causes more selfishness. The money causes more selfishness in the players compared to college athletes. But in this claim, she just says it makes them play because they get paid based on how good they do, so they're not just playing for themselves. That's kind of a contradictory statement, and kind of goes against what she's saying, but I do agree with what she says. It does motivate them, and they're not just playing for themselves anymore, so I don't understand how that'd be considered selfish. They have to play good for the money they receive, and opposed to college players who don't. Wouldn't you say professional players play their absolute best at all times because of this? I would. My opponent uses a quote from athlete Josh Smith who says, "I feel I bring a lot to the table For what I do and what I give to this ball club, I feel I am worth it. I feel this quote actually weakens her argument because it's basically saying he works hard and earns the money he receives. You know, and also another example she uses, she refers to David Robertson, who's a pitcher on the New York Yankees, and she refers to him making $3.1 million. Really? Oh, okay. $3.1 million a year. Alex Rodriguez, being the most paid baseball player, makes $32 million a year, and he still loves the game, according to Baseball Almanac. He says, always follow your dreams, don't let anyone tell you can't be something you can't. Going down to the last claim, she says, college athletes set a better example for young adults and children. This is completely irrelevant to her claim and really has nothing to do with it in any way. So given that, I don't know how accurate the rest of her information could be. She has one last point, says that college games are more interesting to watch, it's because she says because of the rules and regulations that change. It is true, rules and regulations do change when you go from college sport to a professional sport, but these changes, for example, an aluminum bat to a wooden bat, or a wider field goal to a shorter field goal, it actually makes it more difficult, they have to show more skill, which is definitely more interesting. In conclusion, professional sports, being careers, does not make the players selfish. Endorsements actually motivate them to play more, and professional sports are way more interesting than college sports. Thank you. I don't know. I just went there in depth, I guess. My bad. Flew by.
All right, for the most part, I think you do a pretty good job. You know, the argument really is a value claim, and I think that a lot of the arguments that you're presenting, even though we haven't talked about value argument to begin with, deal with some of the same presuppositions. For instance, what is the criteria or the definition of selfishness? Or, for instance, does the pursuit of money automatically equivocate with the absence of love for the game? I thought that those were reasonable challenges, and you used them in a couple of places to make the argument that this, in fact, is not an effective criteria that the advocate has come up with for defining the players in this particular game. Or in this particular comparison that's being made. You follow the structure pretty well, so that's easy to go. And I like the fact that you talk about the advocate's examples and try to reject those by pointing out problems with the analogies. You know, for example, you do what you do best and you get paid for that. That's, I think, a reasonable premise to argue from, and I think that the advocate's premise is problematic otherwise. I think one of the things you can point out, for instance, is a lot of the people who play sports in college would love to get paid for playing professionally. The reason that they don't is because they don't have the same skill set that the ones who get paid for. So there are plenty of people who play professional sports and don't go on, not because they don't want to, but because they're not able to, or for example, there's no sports league, professional sports league that will pay them to play, I don't know, whatever sport it happens to be, you know, badminton or track or whatever it is. Although, once again, there are places where people can pursue those things, and all those folks, you know, are also getting paid. So I think you've got a reasonable challenge here. I just always think that there's like an extra step that you could take on some of these points. For example, on the second point, when you're talking about measuring people's commitment to the game, I thought it was interesting. You talked about the difference between the pitchers and how much money they're making, or not the pitchers, but the two ball players and how much difference they're making in playing the game. And you've got a good quote from Alex Rodriguez about his loving the game. Would there be any other way to measure the love that players have for the game other than the amount of money that they get? And, you know, there might be work level commitments that they make to practice and to working with their team, or their inability to get off the stage when the time is, you know, passed them by. I think we can point to a lot of professional football players and baseball players who overstayed their welcome, not because they needed the money, but because they like the game and they need that sort of thing to motivate them. So I think there are some other things that you could add to that to make it a little bit stronger. On the third point, basically you challenge its relevance, and I thought you had a reasonable explanation. If we had more time, we could talk about it some more, but we need to move on with our lives.